What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of All Wrapped Up. Today's guest is a fourth generation sign maker. From signs and lighting billboards, he has now paved his way in the rap industry for his future generation. Please welcome Chuck Courty. What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to All Wrapped Up Podcast. We'll be interviewing industry-leading rap companies to share tips, tricks, stories, and more. So we're going live now. What's going on, Chuck?
Not much. Just getting over a nasty cold and flu.
Oh man, tell me about it. Some bad stuff going around.
For sure.
What'd you have on the agenda today? What'd you do?
Well, this week has been like kind of a pretty laid back week. I haven't really done anything this week except work on social media and upcoming marketing for the new year.
What plans you got for the new year for your marketing campaigns and what you got going on for your social
Um,
media accounts?
we're gonna be changing some things up a little bit. With my personal page, I'm actually like as of right now, like I'm a freelance installer and I'm like mobile, so my truck is my office. But starting, hopefully, we're aiming for a February 1st opening, but I'm gonna be actually opening my own shop and at a location about an hour away from my house.
Wow. And that's coming up for the new year?
Yeah, like
Nice.
we're looking right now. My uncle owns a marketing agency just outside of Niagara Falls, Canada. So he deals with some big accounts, and he's been actually the guy that's been helping me with everything. Like he's a marketing guru.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's good to have a little bit of a like an influence in the industry to have.
Oh, for sure, 100%.
How long have you
So,
been doing the mobile stuff for?
um, I I went out on my own back in 2012. My parents had a sign shop that closed down, and it gave me the opportunity to just, go forward with just doing rap. Uh, then I did that for probably 2 years and got sick of chasing people for money. Like I was kind of new on my own doing business, and it just was a headache and a hassle trying to collect money all the time. And so I reached out to one of my followers on Instagram, a company in Mississauga, Ontario called Second Skin, and asked them if they were looking for like a qualified installer. And they had actually been following me for a while and were like, yeah, man, we were meaning to reach out to you. Yeah, we'd like to meet you. So I drove down there. Now, Mississauga, Ontario is a 2.5 hour drive from my house. So I
Jesus.
made the made the trek down there and met with the owner Tiago, and we hit it off right away. And I ended up working for Second Skin for I think just a little over 3 years. I was their lead installer. I was uh, the guy that when shit had to get done, he's like, this car has to be out of the shop tomorrow morning. Like I made it happen. Like I stayed there until it was done, and you know we put the time in, and like we yeah, had a lot of fun there and helped him grow his business as well. And then I think it was about uh 2 years ago, this coming March, or maybe almost three, I decided to go back out on my own again. I like the exotics are fun, but like I enjoy doing the printed wraps. I mean, if you will see my social media, like I do a lot of everything. I do
Yeah.
color changes and do specialty wraps and stuff like that. So,
What do you like the most doing? Do you like doing more of the commercial stuff, or do you like doing more of the specialty stuff?
um, excuse me. The commercial stuff is good. I mean, everybody knows that's where the money is.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, Lamborghinis look good and everything on Instagram, but it's that Ford Econoline van that that
That
puts the
pays.
big bucks in your bank account. So,
Yep, those pay the bills at
but
the end of the day.
but yeah, so like I mean, in the last 3 years, I've been working with Eric from ECD Custom. He's a graphic designer from Northern Ontario. He's about 6 hours north of Toronto. Um, and I got linked up with him through social media once again and ended up wrapping his shop truck as well as his SEMA build, which was the Galaxy Max that got featured in the American Force booth about 3 years ago, I think. Yeah, like Eric is a crazy graphic designer. Like he does some pretty cool designs. Like they're out there. Um, he's got another designer that works with him, Martin, and I mean those two together are like the dream team for graphic designs. Like they both got their own style, and I mean you're in the business, so you know that you can't be boring in the rap industry if you're designing. You got to be like out there.
Yeah, but you guys got the perfect trio there too. You've got two great designers and a great installer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well,
Which
that's
which
kind of what we're going for.
yeah, and that's awesome. So you're gonna solely go on your own come 2018, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, like I'll still do stuff with Eric. I mean, that will always be something I'll do. Like, um, I enjoy doing it. It pays really well doing that stuff. Like, I mean, a lot of people will sponsor SEMA stuff.
Right.
We don't do that. Like, I mean, my dad used to have a saying, I can fill my shop up with all kinds of free work, but at the end of the day, it doesn't pay the bills.
Right, right. And you said that you come from a background from like a sign shop. What were you doing then as a kid or a young man working at your parents' place?
So, yeah, like I've grown up in the sign business. I'm fourth generation. My grandfather and my dad were both well-known sign writers, like in the Toronto, like north of Toronto area. Um, my uncle does airbrushing, marketing, like I said.
Hmm.
He also was a wood carver and did carved signs. My other uncle was a silk screen printer. Like we come from a family of of sign guys, so I mean, I grew up in it in the sign shop. While all my friends were playing baseball and hockey, I was silk screening and hand painting billboards. So,
That's awesome. So you can hand paint.
not as good as my dad.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an art in itself.
Yeah. Lots of respect
But
for people that are still doing that till this
oh,
day,
for
you know.
sure. I to this day watch guys like so like I was at I believe it was SGIA or ISA in Vegas a couple years ago and came across an old school hand painter, the Tramp, who's a very well known hand painter, and I like sat there and watched him for 3 hours hand paint a sign. Like there's just so much like good and glory that comes out of watching someone make art with your hands. I just love watching guys do stuff like that.
Yeah, that comes straight from years of experience, comes straight from
Oh,
your head. There's no command Z or control Z when it comes to that stuff. I mean, you really have to start completely all over with a blank slate when you mess something up
yeah.
with something like that.
Oh, for sure. It's not a matter of like, oh, I'll just erase it and redo it. Like, I mean, for the most part, it depends on what they're doing. Like,
Right.
you can fix minor stuff, or they just make it look like, oh yeah, like I meant to do that, but
Yeah. A
uh,
mistake
it,
to
it,
them is just, is nothing.
yes, exactly.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, like my dad, he hand painted signs. He did actually back in I want to say like 1980, 1989, 1990. He did a church where he hand painted pinstriping all around all the windows and did like touched up the mural on the roof like that had been done like back in the day, like even before his time, like he was refreshing it all
Wow.
and just stuff like that. Like I his paintbrushes, he still has them, but he hasn't used them probably since like the mid '90s was the last time he ever took his brushes out.
Yeah, I guarantee they're still oiled up and ready to go.
Oh, they are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those hand painting guys, once they get dialed in with a certain um, pinstripe brush or lettering brush, that
Yep.
brush sticks with them till till the end. They don't go buy a
Oh,
new
for
one.
sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
the the hairs and those things are totally different and made differently now than they were back then. And back then they were a lot better, and I'm sure they'll agree.
Oh, for sure.
I
Like, and
have
I mean, they're all different kinds of strands of hair. Like, they're like horse hair and whatever, like squirrel hair for hand painting.
right,
But
right. Yeah, that I love that art. And you know, in Boston they just shut down I want don't quote me on this, but it was probably about 5 years ago, 4 years ago. They just shut down the last uh, sign school or art school for the sign business, Butera School of Art here in Boston. It was one of the last known sign painting colleges, if you would call it that. It got bought out by another company, and a lot of great people came out of there. I'm sure you know Mike LaValle.
yep. Oh
He,
yeah.
he came out of Butera. I mean, a lot of great people came out of that place, and it's kind of a shame that they had to shut it down because that's a dying art, you know.
Oh yeah. It's hard to find a good hand painter, like a good solid sign painter. We have one guy in my town, a guy by the name of John Lyons, and like to watch him paint a pinstripe on a rim, like it's crazy. Yeah. I mean, you'll never find guys like that again. I mean, there's still guys that are picking up brushes and doing stuff like that, but nowadays it's hard to compete because you have the Roland printers and the HP printers that are printing stuff that these guys used to do. And I mean, the sky's the limits with printers. Same with when the plotters came out back
Right.
then, and guys had to make a decision where am I gonna keep hand painting signs or am I gonna use the Gerber plotter and plot them? So,
Right.
and that's a decision my dad and my grandfather had to make. Was like, okay, we can cut using this machine, or and it's gonna cut everything straight and whatnot, but or do we spend a full day doing hand painting?
Yeah. You either and that goes even with now with the technology changing every few years or couple years. You really have to keep up with the times, even in the digital world. You know.
Oh, for sure. I mean, even airbrushing. Like, why are you gonna pay a guy to airbrush when I can have a guy design it on a computer and make it look the exact same?
Exactly.
So, but yeah, like I said, my uncle, he was like one of the best airbrushers in our area. I mean, he was amazing. The stuff he used to do.
That's insane. And do you design a lot of your stuff as well, or do you just mainly just a freelance installer?
I'm just an installer. I will never ever say that I'm a graphic designer because I'm not.
That's cool because a lot of the people,
So,
at least I've had that are on the podcast, um, are both. You know, they're a full service shop, so they have to wear all the hats. Unfortunately, so it's nice to have somebody that just only puts the stuff on because it's different. You go through different scenarios being just an installer because if you don't have your hands in the design or able to put in, your 2 cents as far as how you want to install it, installs can take you
yeah.
quite a bit of time to put on because of the profiling. And I'm sure you can agree with that sometimes.
Oh, for sure. Like I like to work with the graphic designers. Like I said, working with Eric, um, like I know how he's gonna lay out the panels. I know exactly how he's gonna print everything for me. Like we talk about stuff, so we're so well established now. He doesn't have to call me anymore and say, "Hey Chuck, like how do you want this panel printed?" He knows if I'm wrapping a truck, I need the cab corner printed separate from the door if I'm doing like a pickup truck, or the car, like I want something printed separately because I mean, you get a yellow car and you're wrapping it with a like a black graphic, like you got to go in a little bit further
Right.
just so you don't see the factory color.
Can you share with me any nightmares for installs? Because I'm sure you have plenty of those in your beginning days, at least.
So yeah, we did a sign show, or sorry, my dad and I went to a sign show back in probably the early 2000s, so like 2000, late 2000, and we were in the market for a printer. I mean, we had to step our game up in the town we were in. We compete against one of the big auto trim franchises, so of course they had a digital printer at the time. So my dad's like, "Hey, we gotta step up our game and get one." So we ended up buying a 36-inch NCAD printer, which NCAD, I mean, if you know printers, everyone knows NCAD is probably the biggest piece of shit you could buy. Like it was such a nightmare. It never printed right, always had issues, but it we had to work with it. So the first wrap I ever did was on a Ford, what was it? A Ford Econoline van, like a cube van, and we were just wrapping the back, and we didn't have a laminator, and of course, like my dad was a sign painter, so he had all his spray stuff, like so he got a can of frog juice and sprayed the print after we printed it, and we installed it like that. And to this day, and no word of a lie, that van is still on the road with that same print on it. And that was 2001 we did that. So almost like 16 years it's been on there. I mean, it looks it.
That
It's
that
going,
fro that frog juice served its purpose. Wow, that's going old school with the liquid laminate there.
oh yeah, like my dad used to use frog juice for everything. Like
Yeah,
we used to do a lot of electrical signs, like backlit signs, and that what was how he finished it.
that's
Just spray the
awesome.
frog juice on it.
That's awesome. You know, people would be ashamed to say a lot of that stuff, and I'm glad you brought that up because I've in the beginning stages of my printing, I've done a lot of frog juice. Probably because I mean, come on, you buy a laminate, for a decent laminate, you're talking like dishing out another 5 grand. And
Yep.
back then it was probably a lot more.
Yep.
Um, but Royal Sovereign all day, 5 grand all day, and
Yes.
a bottle of, you know, frog juice is what, $7. Get a
Yeah,
get a
it's
couple
cheap
door letterings out of that.
and it goes a long way too. Like yeah, my dad could stretch frog juice out. I mean, that's like old school sign guy mentality right there. Just
Yeah,
bust out the can of frog juice. So, but I mean, so we did that. We had the NCAD probably for I want to say about almost 2 years, and like so my mom was in the sign business with my dad. My mom ran the business aspects of it. My dad did, the signage part. He quoted everything, and then I kind of worked under him and was like the grunt of the shop, the
yeah,
boss's son. So, we ended up selling the NCAD and bought a 54-inch Roland printer. And going from an NCAD to Roland is basically like going from like a Honda Civic to a Mercedes Benz. Like it was amazing. And then we bought the Royal Sovereign laminator as well with it. So you know that in itself, it was amazing. It was a big step for
yeah.
us.
Game changer right there. Do you remember what model the Roland was?
I want to say SB 55. I can't
SP
remember.
540V?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, that was it. Yeah.
that's what I had, and that was basically the best. That was probably one of the best printers of its era. It was such
Oh,
a workhorse.
I will tell you, we put that thing through a lot. So one summer we were so busy that I used to work the graveyard shift at the shop, and my dad would work 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and I would work 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. because we had 3 or 4 boats to do. And I mean, if you know that printer, it's not fast,
No, no.
especially if you're printing in high quality. So we used to print everything high quality, so it would lay down a lot of ink.
Hmm.
And yeah, we did a 42-foot slingshot, and halfway through the print, the power went out. And
Oh,
my dad was so pissed. But I mean, you got to do what you got to do. And I mean, after that, he went out and bought like a backup battery generator. So if we
oh.
had a power surge, it would like just keep going. It would stay on.
Now, if
But
people
yeah,
now people who don't know that printer back then, there was no such thing as a take-up reel. I
no,
had
there wasn't.
I had mine set up. I don't know if you actually would have thought this. I set up like a folding table in front of it, and I would drape the print as it's coming out the printer over the table and roll it into a core inside out.
Okay.
And every like 20 minutes, I'd come back. It'd be almost touching the floor. Come back, roll it up. That was my take up reel, basically.
We took a piece of coroplast, and we had the flute cutting knife that, if you're cutting election signs and stuff, you can cut them into size through the flutes.
Right.
So we just cut basically the back side of it so it would, roll up, and that's what we put so to keep it off the floor. So you would wipe it out before you did a print, and
Oh
then
my
it would
God.
stay about a couple inches off the floor,
Yep.
and it was like our basket to catch it.
That's awesome. How were your blacks when you were printing it? They come out a little
Black,
green.
and I'll tell you, black is the hardest color for shops to print because
Yeah.
a lot of guys will print a black inside, think it looks good, wrap a vehicle and go outside and it looks like a greenish, like a gross looking color.
Yep.
So we learned after the the second or third one, hey, we should test print this black just to make sure it's gonna look black outside. But I mean, it's trial and error. You have
Definitely.
to learn from that.
Definitely. Oh my God. I messed up more media than I can even think of right now with those
Well,
situations.
100%.
Uh, but
I'm sure you're not the only one, and you will. Guys do it every day now. It's
oh
like
my God,
grays.
yeah.
Grays are hard to print. Blacks, different reds, just all different colors. That, and I tell this to different shops that I work with. Especially guys that are just getting into printing, if you're gonna print something for a customer, print a 2 foot by 2 foot sample, take it outside and show them. They got to see those colors because if they approve it inside the shop and then you print it, and I mean, you know this too, you take a car outside, it's not the same color.
Completely different. Yeah, I saved a lot of headaches printing color samples. I learned my lesson a couple times.
Get that signature on it as well, so the client they approve it.
You
I mean,
know it.
without that signature, you're like, hey, you approved this red or you approved this black. Like, this is your signature right beside it. So,
Right. Right. It's tough. It's tough. And when you're up and coming, a year into it, you're still learning uh all these mistakes, and it sucks. And I'm glad there's a lot more people talking about it because it saves a lot of people the
well, yeah,
aggravation.
like with pages or in groups like the Rap Society on Facebook. I mean, you have guys all over the world that are sharing their stories like, hey, like, I don't know how this material works, like, what do I got to do? And I mean, for the most part, people are pretty helpful, but I mean, you'll always have, guys that are just gonna stir the pot up and are like, what are you doing with that? Like, going back to, I think it was your first podcast with the guys from the
Sign
sign. What were they?
scientists.
Yes,
Yep.
they were talking about like Corel Draw versus Photoshop versus Illustrator. I mean, my dad used to have a thing back in the day. He never used Corel Draw. He said Corel Draw was for amateurs. Well, Corel Draw in the last couple of years has started kicking Adobe Illustrator's ass. I mean, they've kicked it up. So the one day I went into the shop and my dad's, designing, and I'm like, "What are you doing on Corel Draw?" Like, for my whole entire life, you're telling me Corel Draw's for amateurs. He's like, I don't know. Like, they've changed it. It's so easy to use now. So you can teach an old dog new tricks.
Definitely. Did he kind of or did you grow up more or less with FlexiSign? I had this conversation this week with Dan from Travel Wraps.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
brought up FlexiSign and he was floored that I knew what it was back then when it was a vector
So
program.
so I grew up and I learned on the 15-inch Gerber plotter. So I learned on Composer, which is an old school cutting program. Like I tried to so back in, I want to say 2002, I worked for a Cinerama franchise for 6 months.
Hmm.
And I mean, they had just basically opened their doors and they were a new shop. So they had a new graphic designer fresh out of, college or university. And I was telling them, like, hey, man, like, I use Composer. Like, you don't have to vectorize anything. I can literally, like, scan this image in of, like, obviously black and white, and I can bring it in and I can start cleaning it up on Composer. He's like that's impossible. Like how does it do it? And that was like old school,
Right.
like the 80s was Composer. Like that's what I learned on. So getting into like Sign Pal or Flexi, like that was a challenge for me. Like it was hard to pick up.
Yeah, it definitely was a challenging program because it was kind of not. I don't think it was the first of its kind because I think Illustrator was coming out at around the same time too. But it basically
Yeah.
only worked with vectors. You could only do so much. It's not like Illustrator where you can actually input photos. You wouldn't get the highest quality like you do now when you input those photos.
No, like
Nothing near what
yeah,
you
like
could do now.
Composer was like the guy wanted a shape of a guy working. That's that's the old lettering back then. Like there was no like real faces and stuff like that like there is today. So I basically my dad's shop probably in my early grade school days, probably around 7 or 8. So 1987, 1988, and I was just messing around in the shop, and then I started working for him, after school or on weekends. I would go in with him, or on summer holidays, and I always knew I was going to do something within the industry,
Mhm.
but I was never ever going to open a sign shop. Like, no way. So when the vehicle wraps came, I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. Like the vehicle wraps is my thing. This is gonna be my art. My uncle with the airbrushing, like I said, my
Right.
other uncle was a silk screen printer. Like this guy could silk screen print and not get a drop of ink on him. His silk screen squeegee was clean. I would silk screen print and it would be everywhere. It would be on me. It'd be all over the floor. Like it was a mess. But he could do it. Like he would wear like all white. Like back then, those guys wore suit and ties to work. Like my grandfather wore a suit and tie and he was a sign writer.
Wow.
Getting into the wraps now. So after my parents' sign shop closed down, and I'm trying to think when it was. Probably about 5, almost 6 years ago. my dad got diagnosed with throat cancer, so he he ended up, taking some time off work, and I had to step up to, continue to keep the sign shop going with my mom. And we at the time we had four employees. We had one graphic designer, or sorry, two graphic designers, and we had two employees in the back, and as well as myself.
Wow.
And uh, like I had to get into quoting. Well, my dad's laid up in the hospital in Toronto. Like he got pretty lucky that they were able to catch his cancer before it spread throughout his body.
Oh, that's
So
great.
they kind of they told him, like he's got to stay away from the shop for about a year. And being a stubborn old sign guy, he was like, screw that. He ended up coming back 6 months after.
Wow.
Um, and then we did a big job in downtown Toronto. So we had a full service bucket truck, which I was one of the guys on the truck as well if I wasn't in the shop. So I did sign and lighting, billboards, stuff like that. And we did a big job downtown Toronto for a gas station, all new pylon signs, all new island signs, security lighting. We faced the whole store, and the guy decided at the end of the job he wasn't going to pay us. And I, like, the whole time we were there, everything was good. It was an $80,000 job, so we switched like his pylon over to all LED. And I mean, the price of LED signs isn't cheap.
Oh, definitely,
so
definitely. Even coming, only a few
so
years back, it was a lot more money then than it is now.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
that's that's definitely the struggle. Whether you're in the sign business or digital printing or wholesale, whatever
yeah,
industry in wide format that you're in, you always this I don't want to say this always happens, but you always hear about these nightmare stories where clients just don't pay you at the end, and
yeah,
everything's all hunky dory until it's time to give them the
that's
invoice, and that's a make or break for a lot of shops sometimes. If you, I know I was living, at the beginning stage, paycheck by paycheck, job
yeah,
by job, and if I
yeah,
didn't get paid for that job, I wasn't eating, and that's a tough situation, especially when you have a family and you're not the only one supporting yourself. You got to support others too, and it's tough.
yeah. Well, so going back to that job, like, so the guy had no problem, signed a check off at the beginning for 40 grand, which would cover, we took our deposit, which was normal, and then, you get the remaining balance at the end of the job. Like, the guy was really nice through the whole process. Like, hey, can I get you guys a coffee? Can I buy you lunch? Like, and it came out of nowhere. So, you know, I established a relationship with him on the job because we were there for a while. Like, it was a big job.
Right.
So, I filled out all my paperwork, and I followed, my paperwork. Like, I helped my mom run that side of the business. So, I remember giving him the invoice, and he just looked at me, and he's like, "Get the fuck off my property." And I like laughed at him, and I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Get the fuck off my property." And I'm like, "No, like I need a check. Like you owe us, 40 grand." He's like,
Right.
"If you don't leave my property right now, I'll call the cops." So I tell the guys that were there with me, I'm like, "All right, start taking it down. We're taking it all back." He's like, "You touch that stuff, I'll have you thrown in jail so fast." And that was a hard phone call to make to my mom, and it was almost a couple months after that, my mom ended up having a stroke because of
Wow.
the stress from that job. Like 40 grand to a small business, I mean, to anybody is a
Yeah.
lot of money.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I mean, she's still with us today. Like she had to get out of it. So
Yeah,
um
sometimes it's better just to cut your losses because your health is worth way
yeah.
more than money at the end of the day.
So we continued once again to try to keep the shop running, and I mean, it would just like anything. You dig a hole, it's hard to fill that hole back up. You just keep digging it deeper and deeper and deeper, and
To go back on that too, the legal side of that sucks, for
oh,
for the
for
for the
sure.
for the person doing the job because, legally, as stupid as this sounds, once you put that sign up, it's theirs whether they paid for it or not.
Well, it's on their property, and that's
Yeah,
that's what. So, my dad's also a Freemason. A lot of the Masons are retired lawyers and judges and
right,
people of interest,
right.
and they said to him, like, honestly, you're gonna spend 50 to get your 40 back.
Yeah,
They're like, it's not even worth it. Like, do what you can. You can go to collections, you can do that, but you know, and at least in Canada, the 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 bad guys always win. It
yeah,
seems
yeah. It
when it comes
happens.
to that. So I mean, for me now as a businessman myself, like it's stuff like that I've learned from. Like I don't do I don't do terms with anyone anymore. Like I have that established right from the beginning,
Hmm.
and I mean, I can't go to McDonald's and buy a Big Mac and fries and say, hey, man, like I'll hit you up at the end of the week. Like
Right,
it doesn't work like that. So why should I be the guy that says, yeah, no problem, I'll float your debt for a week or a month?
right, right,
But I mean, big contracts and stuff like that, I get it. They're big
right.
corporate companies. If they're well established, they have 30, 45, 60 days. I get that, but I don't have like if I have a guy that's like, hey, I want my car wrapped, I'm like, all right, this is the price. So I need to deposit now and I'll get the rest when I'm finished. So
Exactly.
you establish that at the beginning. There's no secrets. It's not a secret that, hey, like, no, you still owe me $2,000 or you still owe me $20,000. Like they know they gotta pay it. And
Right.
I mean, half the time, like there's a lot of people that play dumb and I don't understand why. Like,
They're everywhere. They're everywhere. And here's a quick tip too. Just before the client comes to pick up the car, make sure that car is still in your garage
oh,
because
100%.
as soon as that car is out and outside of your property and in common
Yep.
area, whether he
Yep.
pays you or not, he can get in and leave. But if that car
Oh,
is
for
in your
sure.
garage, they can't do nothing. Call the cops. It's inside my
Yep.
garage and you owe me money and it can't leave until I have cash now. So
Yep.
pound sand. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That that
No,
that
that's what it's come down to.
I've had one or two of those in my 16 years of being in the industry. I've had one or two of those, and you'll see how fast they go run to the ATM.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I like nowadays everything's online. I mean, when guys are ordering a vehicle wrap or a sign, they know how much money they got in their bank account. They know their
right,
budget. So it's not like it's a big secret, but we have electronic, at least in Canada, we have electronic transfers, so you can transfer money from bank account to bank account. You have PayPal, you have money transfer orders, like you got everything. So, and you got cash. It's not a very rarely that I'll do personal checks, but company checks I'll accept. But yeah, I
What's
mean,
your
I gotta get paid.
yeah, definitely. What's your take on financing? That's kind of like a new thing. I think I spoke to Eddie over at Street Image Wraps, and he was saying that 2018 he's going to have financing from a bank. So when big corporates come in, or a small guy, doesn't have 2,500, 3 grand to spend on wrapping his van, he can do financing.
So a friend of mine that I help pretty well throughout the winter. He owns a custom car shop uh, just outside of Toronto. He just started doing financing, and I mean for him, it's good because I mean he gets paid right from direct from the finance company or the bank or whoever is basically paying the bill.
Right.
So I mean it's their job, the bank or the financer, to go after that person. So, I mean, you get paid no matter what. It's not like that person's paying you monthly payments. They're paying the finance company monthly payments. So, I guess it's good in a way. I don't know if I'll personally ever offer financing for vehicle wrap, but I mean, who knows? It might happen. People finance trucks, cars, whatever, so I guess
Right.
they could finance wraps too.
Yeah, why not? You know, to get you off the hook and someone else can deal with the headache. I I
Well,
I
that's it. And I
I
mean,
do that.
at the end of the day, you're getting paid no matter what from that finance company. So you either offer the financing or you lose the job to a company that's going to finance them.
Yeah. I was gonna get into vinyl materials, but what brand do you like the most to work with?
So there's like a story to this. So I have an 8-year-old daughter, and her name is Avery. So that right there tells you
What a
what material is
coincidence.
probably my favorite. Like Avery Dennison was in my dad's shop,
Mhm.
Mac Tac, Oracal. Those were the vinyl brands in the shop. Now, 3M at one time wasn't available to regular sign shops. It was only available to the big franchises and stuff like that.
Right.
So, I mean, I grew up with Avery Dennison as our go-to, and MacTac. That was the biggest brands in our shop. So personally now, for vehicle wraps, for color changes, I use 3M, KPMF, a lot of Avery. I will install Oracal or Aurafoil now, and uh, and Vivid vinyl. Like, I mean, Vivid is fairly new to the industry in the last few years.
Right.
They've had their ups and downs, and I mean, they're trying to keep up with the big names like Avery Dennison and 3M. But my go-tos for print wise are definitely the Avery 1105. I love the way it goes down. And going back to the science scientists, those guys were saying that they prefer the 3M. I I'm kind of different with that. Like, I'll use 3M, I'll install it, but hands down, I prefer Avery 1105 over 180.
Over 180. All right. So we got an Avery guy.
Yep.
I'm I'm a
Yep.
I'm a 3M guy. But don't get me
Well,
wrong, when you're in a pinch, I will resort to Avery. I mean, I'm not completely downing the product, but price-wise, it really all depends on the client too, cuz I come from the commercial side of things. So when the first thing I'm asking is, listen, wraps aren't cheap. What's your budget? And that's going to determine whether I'm using 3M or whether I'm using Avery, unfortunately.
definitely, yeah. Price is definitely a difference, at least here in Canada. We have Grimco, and carries Avery. They just started carrying 3M, but the price point is way off between the two.
Right.
They're not even in the same ballpark for price wise,
Really?
per bundle. But I mean, you get into the Sprinter vans, like, you can't use. I mean, you can use 180, but they prefer you to use. I think it's 3 or 480, I believe.
Yeah.
And
You
for
know
the
what?
deeper channels, that stuff's not cheap. It's expensive.
Now tell me, I'm very biased with this whole situation with the deep channels on the Sprinters or even the new Transits. How do you go about wrapping inside of that? Because maybe I haven't found someone who's wrapped it well enough that I've not seen it pop. Because I see all the
Yeah.
time, you can use that 480 or um that new brand they have coming out from 3M. I don't have it.
Actually,
Yeah.
Arlon just launched a new. I think it's the SLX material. Like, Arlon just came out of nowhere with this new stuff, and it's meant for the deep channels now. A couple years ago, Arlon had, I think it's called the DXP 6100 or 6000, I believe,
Yeah.
and that stuff was so aggressive.
Yeah.
But when
Yeah,
you
but
put
that's
it in that channel, it wasn't popping ever. Like, good luck peeling that stuff off, let alone it pop.
yeah, see, I
But
always did a relief cut and just left that channel. I usually would either stripe it with a piece of black that'd be the same
okay,
width as that inside
yep.
channel just to cover the seam, or if the
Mm.
cut was good enough, I'd leave it with the reveal of white underneath. Cuz from afar, when you're looking at the thing straight dead on, you're not really going to tell.
Yeah.
But I would guarantee that that thing would not pop. Every time I've seen a Sprinter, at least in this area, dude, blown out corners like crazy. I I I cringe. I'm like, man, and then I know what's exactly behind it. You know, it's got a shit ton of Primer 94 all over it. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Because
so
that's a go-to on a new installer. They're like, oh, I'll just primer it. You know, I'm gonna
I hate
paint the whole car
primer.
with it. Why not?
I I I'm man, primer has got to be the worst thing that was ever made.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
I, I
I
mean,
agree.
there's a time and a place for it, and in a deep channel on a Sprinter van is not the place for it
No.
because I'm part of the Masters of Branding, and I was working with a guy by the name of Russ from Wisconsin from Flipside Graphics, and we were actually talking about the Sprinter van, and he's like, man, he's like, Primer 94 is not like a miracle, like like liquid that you're gonna put there and it's gonna hold that channel down. He's like, if vinyl's gonna pop, it's gonna pop. Like,
Right.
primer's not gonna save it because it's gonna want to pull away from the backing. The adhesive's gonna separate.
Right.
And so, getting back to Arlon, I don't know if you know Richie Days, who's Arlon's like guru master trainer. Richie trains the proper way of doing sprinter vans, and ever since Richie showed me how to do them, I have never had a sprinter van pop. And like the way he installs is, I mean, it's like you heat away from where you're pushing the vinyl because your stretch when you get in there with the roller, if you're
Right.
gonna roll it into that channel, like, you're taking so much material and you're spreading it out, and that's why, because you don't have the contact that you need in that channel, and heating it 6 inches up and taking a stretch within that area, you're putting in the right amount of material that into that channel.
Now,
So,
are you implying that that works with all medias or just Arlon?
well, yeah, because all media, basically all vinyl has the same properties
Right.
in a way. Like, I mean, they're all made differently. They all install differently. Like KPMF to 3M to Avery to Arlon, they you can't install them all the same. Their backings are all different.
Right.
So, I mean, that's what makes them different brands. So, I install 3M the same way I install Avery, the same way I install Arlon for a Sprinter van. I don't hit the roller, at least I try not to. I mean, the corners are tough when you're
Right.
coming in there, but at the end of the day, too, post heating is an essential. Like, you have to post heat. There's a
Absolutely.
lot of guys that skip that part of it. That's the finishing touches. You have to post heat. If you don't post heat, there's no point in,
You
it's
might
coming back.
right. You might as well not even put it on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it all, like I said, they all installed differently, especially coming from the color change side of it. Now, I've worked with KPMF for a couple years now.
Yeah.
I worked at their booth at RapsCon this year in Long Beach,
Saw
and I
that.
worked their booth at SEMA this year, and they've changed the way their material installs now. They've made it less tackier, and I'm sure a lot of people that have installed KPMF know KPMF was very aggressive to work with.
Mhm.
So you couldn't do a full peel. You couldn't make it glass. Like,
Right.
you can't do that. It doesn't work that way. So you would have to go little by little. So when I would do like say a quarter panel on a car, I would peel it back as I was going. So one, you get a nice clean install because you're constantly wiping the quarter panel down or the door or whatever
Right.
you're wrapping. But with Avery or even the new 180, you can make it glass. Like you can pull the whole backing off and go to town.
Right.
But KPMF has actually changed that formula from a couple years ago, and you can do the same thing with KPMF now.
Well,
So
that's great. Do you now? I'm not too familiar with KPMF, and do they have a pretty good color selection for color changes?
their colors are absolutely phenomenal. They 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 definitely changed the game a couple years ago when they came out with their custom color laminates.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that just changed everything. So you could take, say, um, like a burgundy, for instance. We did a Lexus a few years ago, and we put I think it was a gold starlight laminate over top, and it like you could see the burgundy, and then you could see the gold metallic flake, and we called it the Iron Man car because it looked like Iron Man. It was gold and burgundy. Like
That's
it
awesome.
was crazy looking.
Now, are you helping them create anything, any new colors or anything? If you're working with them?
So last year, uh, myself and a friend of mine from Edmonton, Alberta, Ryan Knoppers, drove to Michigan to meet with KPMF, and we actually made two colors with them. Imperial Orchid was Ryan's color, and matte blue titanium, or sorry, matte ice blue titanium was my color. I basically wanted a color that looked like satin blue chrome without the cost of chrome. Like
Yeah,
chrome is expensive. It's like $3,000 a roll here.
yeah,
So
definitely.
I'm like, satin's big right now. People like the satins and the mattes. Let's make this color. And their girl Anastasia literally went in the back, came out a couple minutes later, and was like, "What do you think of this?" I'm like, "That's it right there. That's what I want."
What's the process with
So
something like that? Do they just go out back and just, you know, print samples or something? Like a big
no,
printer? Or is it
it's
like
all
chemistry stuff going on back there?
yeah, it's chemistry stuff for
Yeah,
sure. Like
it's a whole nother
you gotta
level.
have some, yeah. So I mean, Anastasia can make some pretty awesome colors. I mean, she's constantly making stuff every single day and just testing with different colors and trying to make different things. So at SEMA they released four new or five colors there. Maybe it was four. I can't remember now. But one was oh man, it was like almost like a matte copper. I'm gonna have to go get my colors. I can't remember.
I'm
But
trying
they came
I'm
out with
trying to look on Instagram right now for you
they
while we're
had
talking.
yeah they came out with the blue to black iridescent, which we did on an M5 for one of their sponsored vehicles at the show that I did live at the show. Then they did, it's almost like a copper color, and Ryan is gonna kill me for not remembering this because so we wrapped my good friend's GTR that they had displayed in the booth
Was that
in that
that
color.
it was that copper colored one? Yeah, I did see that because
Yeah,
I saw that on the
Autumn Fire. Matt Autumn Fire is that color.
yeah,
And they came out with the Metro restyling satin gold, rose gold. Sorry, satin
rose
rose
gold.
gold, and then another one. It's almost like a yellowish green, and they did it for the big reveal. Or sorry, not the big reveal. The Paint is Dead and Masters of Branding release.
Was it the matte
Ah,
viper green?
no, 1 second. Man, this is so bad that I can't remember this.
Well, when you're dealing with
It's
millions of
Solar
colors,
Flash. It's called KPMF Solar Flash, and I mean, their laminates are amazing. They're like a paint-like finish. It's hard to tell with some of the new KPMF colors.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not paint.
Yeah, it's always hard to tell when you're looking on Instagram and seeing the final product on people's things because, you see it you don't see it at its natural state. They're putting filters on and stuff like that. So you're never going to get the exact photograph, the raw
Yeah,
photograph at least.
yeah.
Well, that's cool.
But
I'll have to check them out for sure.
yeah, I mean the Imperial Orchid, which was Ryan Knopper's color, the purple, like he wanted this purple and he had it set out that this was his color. And I mean that color sold out so quick. Like Metro couldn't keep it in stock.
Yeah.
It was going, and I'm pretty sure it's like up there in one of their best sellers for colors.
What?
Purple's making a comeback.
Right. No, definitely. Especially with the what was it, the Challenger that they came out
Yeah,
with the
yeah, yeah,
crazy, I forget what crazy plum purple, whatever color it was from back in the day. It's definitely
yeah.
making a comeback. What color do you think we're gonna end 2017 with? Like the top number one color? I'll tell you what mine is.
That's a hard one. Yeah, what's yours?
I'm thinking that psychedelic color. Man, I like anytime I'm looking on through Instagram, it's like somebody else wrapped it that color, and someone's doing a bike, someone's doing exotic. It's a great color. Don't get me wrong. Holy cow, it's a great color, and the way it shifts and everything, it's just like
So
everyone's doing that color. It's crazy. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a great color, but wow,
yeah.
they
So I
3M made
mean,
a lot of money with that color.
oh, for sure. So I mean, I run another page. So I run the page for the people that are listening called the Rap Promoter, which promotes raps from around the world. Um, and I get tagged in, and I will every day a psychedelic color, and I'm like, man, like that's a sick color, but I can't just saturate my whole page with
Which is the
psychedelic. Like people are getting sick of it.
yeah, yeah. I'm one.
So
I'm one of them.
so so yeah. So I mean, I run the Rap Promoter page. I made the account in 2014. Today we just actually looking at it right now. I just hit 50,000 and well 50.1 thousand followers we hit today. Um, we're
Congratulations on that.
we're not the largest rap promoting page because Tim from Rapper Mapper, I think he's up at 56,000. So kind of a race between us. So we kind of like all work together, and yeah, I mean we share a lot of the same work, as well as Rapfolio, who's a buddy of mine from California, Kevin. So we kind of we'll message each other, and it's kind of like a race, like who's gonna be number one this week?
Right, right. Funny story for the listeners. So I had actually reached out after I had talked to you to come on to the podcast and message you. I messaged the rap promoter and I'm like, hey, maybe we can cross promote. I want to build up some more following. And I'm like, oh, maybe you can come on the podcast. And he's like, oh, I'm already gonna be on next week. And I'm like, oh, shuffling through my notes, and I'm like, damn, I got 4 people this week. Which one is it? He's like, oh, it's Chuck. Oh my god, talk about a laugh. My fiance was like dying in the car. She's like, what are you laughing about? And I'm like, I just got punked. I think, it was so funny, and I'm sure a lot of people didn't know that you ran that
Well,
IG.
there is a lot, and there's a lot of local shops. So one thing with the rap promoter, and it's my rule, is I mean I get people asking me to rap stuff all the time from that account.
Hmm.
I tell people flat out, I'm not a rap shop. I just advertise and promote rap shops. But I
Right.
will refer you to a company in your area, and I have not once ever referred anyone to myself. So even if they're in my area, because I don't think it's fair, like, oh, what, I'm just gonna start picking work off off of Instagram.
Yeah, double
So I
dipping.
just say like, oh, I have somebody, like I had a guy from yesterday from California call me, so I have a number set up so people can actually call and talk to me. So I had a guy from California. He's like, "Hey man, I'm a big time follower of your page. he's like, I'm in a bind right now and I need some installers. Like, I took on this big contract and I don't have enough hands. Do you know anyone in the California area? And I mean, being part of the Masters of Branding, uh, I just started like say, okay, I know this guy's in this area. Like, give him a call. There's Pain is Dead guys, so I'll refer guys from there. I mean,
Right.
now that we have all these networks up now that people can just go on there and search for installers. Go to the 3M website, go to the Avery website, go to Arlon's website. Like, you can find qualified guys to help that are just guys like me. They're freelance installers.
Right. Yeah, and we never had that, up until maybe, I don't know. What would you say? 10 years maybe? Like
Yeah, like the social media thing has taken off. Like like crazy in the last probably 10 years. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
with
The amount of
Facebook.
people you can reach with just a DM or a like or a comment, it's just
Yep.
unbelievable. I mean, when I was a big follower, back then, even 10 years ago with a bunch of people, and now coming in and actually meeting these people, it's unbelievable because you see their work, you see them posting up whatever's going on for for their week, and it's kind of
Yep.
nice to kind of meet them, and I think, SEMA is such a great avenue where now SEMA is incorporating, or taking in the vehicle wrap industry in the
Oh yeah.
technology now than they were back then. And
Yeah. So RapsCon, that I think it's well, Rug from I'm trying to remember where he's from, but he he put this together with his team, and I did the first year, and I mean a lot of installers showed up, but and then I missed last year because
mhm.
we had a guy book that was determined that he wanted his Lamborghini wrap that week and didn't care what it cost. So we're like, all right, well, screw RapsCon. We're making money. So
Yeah.
I said I would never miss another one, and I ended up going this past year, and it was huge, like probably the biggest one yet, and like you get to meet the people that are on the other side of that Instagram.
Right.
And it's cool, like meeting people from all over the world, really. Like
Right.
guys fly in from New Zealand, Japan, um, where else? Netherlands, like all over the UK, like just everywhere. Canada.
Right.
So, and same with SEMA. Like SEMA was huge this year. I mean, the wraps are definitely taking over SEMA. They're taken over by storm. You'll see less painted cars soon than wrap cars at SEMA, and the quality is getting better. And I mean, if you watch like Justin Pate's SEMA rundown, like he said, there was more better wrap quality cars this year than previous years. Normally, the crappy ones outnumbered the good ones, and it was good to see installers stepping up their game this year and putting out better work. Like SEMA is the show to showcase your work if you're wrapping cars.
Right.
Like whether it's a sponsored car or not, like if you're gonna put your name on a vehicle, it should be perfect.
Take some pride in the craft, because that's exactly what it is. It's a craft. I mean, not everybody can lay vinyl, and you get the people out there that are like, oh, I'll buy a roll, I could do it, no problem.
Yeah.
And then they'll do something flat. They're like, oh yeah, this is fine, and then they get around the bumpers and they're ripping their hair out.
Well, okay, so yeah, that's it. And getting back to your interview with Vinyl Vixen Jess, like I've never personally met her. I've seen their work on Instagram, and I've kind of seen her floating around the shows, but never personally actually met her. And you guys were talking about the certifications. Now, I mean, everyone has their views on it, but I believe that you should be holding at least one or two certifications. Like I currently hold five certifications. One not being 3M, which Marcio from 3M keeps telling me, hey, like you gotta come get a 3M certification. You got everybody else's, but not ours. So, I mean, eventually I will get it, but for certain reasons, I don't feel like I need it right now,
Right.
due to some issues in the Canadian market. But it is what it is, and I will get it eventually, but just not right now. So I hold my Avery certification. I have my Arlon certification. I got Clearplex certification. I have the Knifeless accredited, which has kind of gone over to 3M Knifeless endorsed.
Hmm.
But for me, not holding a 3M preferred, it's kind of hard because you're supposed to hold a preferred to get the Knifeless endorsed. But we're just working things out with that. And then, I mean, I'm Rapify certified, which really for Canadians doesn't mean anything because Rapify hasn't come into the Canadian market yet.
Right.
So, but I wanted to be one of the first ones in Canada to hold that one. So when they do a campaign in the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area, I want to be the first one that they call to say, hey, like we got a fleet of cars for you to do, come do them. So, but
Well,
yeah, I
hope.
definitely think certification is a must.
Yeah, I mean, I had this conversation with Dan the other day about the certifications because he's a 3M um, certified trainer as well,
Yep,
and
yep,
he not that he was being biased. Everyone has their own opinion, um, but he said it's probably more or less your era. If you're the
yep,
new upcomer and you found your technique and you've got a groove and you basically have learned what you need to learn, the
yep,
chances of you going out and getting a certification to justify that is
yep.
probably not going to happen because you're probably more worried on making money than going to spend, two, three, $4,000 to go spend a
Yeah.
week in training and then take a test at the end.
Hmm.
Um, like me, I don't hold any certifications on my end. I mean, but I think my generation or my era that I grew up in, they didn't have those certifications either at the time. It kind of came
Okay.
later. Um,
Yeah.
so I already went through all my wrongs and made them right. I mastered a little bit of my craft to a point where I didn't feel like I needed the certification to justify it. And plus, if money's tight, as anyone knows, you might not have the
Yeah.
time nor the funds to do it. Um, but I think it definitely has something to do with your generation for sure. The
Like
upcomers,
so certifications they help. It's like a driver's license, right? For your
right?
car. Like you can't drive a car without a driver's license, even though like yeah, like I could drive at, 14 or 15 years old. It I it wasn't legal, but it is different in a sense, but it's the same thing. So the the certifications come down to say I'm installing, let's say, an Avery wrap. It's a printed wrap, and I'm having issues, it popping or something's happening with it, and I have to call up my rep for Avery and say, hey, like I'm having a problem with this. It is easier to get taken care of if you hold a certification with that company because, I mean, you've gone through the steps that they told you how to clean it, how to prep a vehicle, how to maintain it, like, or, post heating or whatnot after the fact, after you wrap it. So it's easier for them to say, okay, this person is qualified. They know what they're talking about. Like, they didn't clean it with Windex and they didn't, wrap a dirty vehicle. Like they have to have, I guess, that faith in you that you went through the necessary steps, that the problem isn't an installer error, that it could be a defect in the material. So it just makes it easier to make that call and say, hey, like I'm having issues with this material, it's doing this, and then they'll take care of you. I mean, there's a lot more to the certification than just that. Um, it just helps. It looks good on your wall, like you're fully certified. Um,
Right,
and
right. I mean,
I mean, I
I
guess we
would
all have our
agree.
views.
Yeah, I would agree. It's almost like going to college. It's the same aspect, having.
Yeah, like you get trained from, Justin Pate, Ricky Days. In Canada, we have Brandon and Vaughn Blanchard. In the U.S., there's a whole bunch of 3M trainers. Lewis. There's Griff Wagner, Mike Zick, Adam Sumner. I'm just going through like all the guys that I know. There's Albert from Hexas. I mean, there's guys all over, and then plus Metro Restyling has a training as well for their elite rappers training, and they have James Tate and Matt from Phenomenal Vinyl.
Yep.
Uh, there's all kinds of training for stuff like that, and a lot of them do offer certifications. I mean, I think you should have some sort of training. Like Justin says, never stop learning.
Right.
But my good friend Ryan in Edmonton, like he doesn't hold any certification. He's probably one of the best installers I know. He could ace a certification like a test.
Yeah, it's a lot, and there are a lot more shops advertising that they can do the certifications there. Because before with 3M, I think you can only go. I forget what
To St.
location.
Paul's
Yeah,
and California. I believe Geekraps offers
Geek Wrap
3M
does offers.
certification.
Yep, yep,
I
definitely.
believe.
There weren't that many
Mm.
locations back then than there are now.
No, there was just a couple of I mean, we have one here in Canada that Brandon and Vaughn Blanchard put on. I mean, it all depends on what part of Canada they're in, but there's either like ND Graphics in Toronto, they'll hold it, or like they're out west at someone's shop. So, uh, yeah, I mean, it's definitely good to have. The 3M one is definitely a lot more money, but I think they touch on a little bit more than say Avery. Avery's more the commercial and the color change, where 3M is all commercial. I might have a little bit of color change. Like I've never taken it, so I've taken their level 1 training and that was it.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, you'll learn how to wrap corrugated, um, rivets, brick, bumpers. I'm sure flat panels. I'm not entirely sure what all their stations are, but hey, I personally recommend it.
Where do you see the rap industry going in the next? I could say 10 years, but I want to say 5 because I feel like every 5 years there's always something like extravagant, like something
Um,
really ridiculously new that comes out. Where do you think the industry is going to go in the next 5 years?
Man, ah, I mean, it's only gonna get better, and it is getting better every year. The materials getting better. I mean, we're for the color team side of it, we're competing with painters, and where we can almost sometimes take vinyl where paint can't go.
Yeah, for sure.
So uh, I think materials are definitely going to get better. They got guys that are working on the formulas to make it easier to install and to last longer. Like we had a wrap on my dad's truck that we did in 2003, and we stripped it 2 years ago. Like, and it was a fully printed wrap, and my dad took care of his wraps. His truck was never dirty. He was constantly sealing it with a wax,
Yeah.
and I mean, to have a wrap last that long is really good. And I know in the hotter states in the U.S., it's hard to get wraps to last, 3 or 4 years because of the constant sun and heat on it. Where here in Canada, like we got, you know, rain, snow. It
Right.
can be
You
really
get this.
hot or really cold.
Yeah, we get similar weather patterns here as you do as well, and it with the snow, at least with the snow I've seen, the salt that they put down on the roads just
Oh
kills
man.
the laminate,
But you know
kills the
what?
laminate.
It protects the factory paint.
Yeah, I mean, one half dozen of the other, I guess.
So
Uh,
I mean my truck's wrapped in what's a fully printed wrap in the 1105. the Avery Dennison 1105 with me. I think it's the 13. Oh, I'm bad with this stuff.
So many
13
numbers.
something.
They gotta just
Yeah,
name these
laminate.
things.
So I mean that's the job of the graphic designer in the print shop to remember that stuff.
Right, right,
But
right. We just put the stuff on. I mean, we don't have to
yeah,
worry
I
about
just
that, right?
install it. I'm just
Yeah.
a sticker
Famous,
slinger.
famous, famous last words. I'm just the installer.
Yeah, well that's it. I didn't design it. I'm just the installer.
Right? Oh
So,
man.
but I mean, yeah, like that the rap industry is definitely heading in the right direction, and people are constantly trying to better their craft, as you said, and it's good. It's crazy to see it. Like I've for me, and like I'm 38 years old in the last since well, like I said, like the early 80s, I've seen it evolve from 15-inch punch vinyl to full digital prints. Like you can now get digital print material wider than 60 inch.
Right.
Like that's making it so much easier for the installer. Like going from 54-inch print to 36-inch, which I started with, to 54-inch to 60-inch, and I'm sure you can get it bigger, but like I don't know 100%, but it's it's just making it easier for us, like to do the whole side of a truck. Most trucks are under what 52 inches top to bottom, so you print 60, and by the time you trim it, you're probably at 58. If you've got a good graphic designer and a good printer that
Yep.
can put that roll in straight, you can stretch it.
I've
So
gotten to those scenarios where you print the 54-inch media and you're down to like 52 and 3/4. You know what I mean?
oh yeah,
You push it. How many times with that SP 540 you pushing those rollers all the way to
oh
the
yeah,
edge to get as much square
yeah.
footage as you can?
52.2 was the widest we ever printed. Like my dad was pushing it to, he's like, we just need to cover 51.5 inches. That we can do this in one piece. Like,
Yeah.
let's see how far we can do this. I'm like, man, if that roll is even like a smidrip off,
Oh.
like it'll either run off the print
Yep. Yep.
or it's just gonna something will just be wrong, and it comes down to even laminating. Now that we had the Royal Sovereign and we had registration marks, laminating is an art in itself.
Yes, sir.
If you can't, you have to know your laminator to
Hmm.
make sure that you can load, like say a 42-foot print and do it all in one shot without it running off.
You know how many times I
That
would, you know how many times I would say Hail Marys and like pray to
oh
God. I'd like be caressing it like just before
oh
I run the
man,
print. I'd be like, come on, baby, don't fuck
yeah,
me now after
yeah,
I just printed this whole thing, please. And
yeah.
I've ruined. I could not even tell you how many prints where it just gets jammed up in the goddamn rollers or something. A piece of hair
Yeah.
gets in the middle of the goddamn print. Oh,
Oh, well, we would be pulling it. So that would be me and the one guy in the shop would be laminating, and he would be like, it's going to the right. So then you're like pulling it on the right as you're pulling it out of, the receiving end. And he's like, oh, it's going left now. So you'd be pulling it to the left, like trying to keep that print going straight. And I mean, the first, like we wasted a lot of material at the beginning, and we're like,
mm-hmm.
okay, we got to figure this out. Like we're losing thousands of dollars here because it would run right off and then it would miss the print. It would go 6 inches up. Like it's crazy how quickly lamination can run off on a
Yeah,
print.
and it's a goddamn last thing you got to do. So it's like,
Yeah,
you've already wasted, 3-4 hours printing the goddamn thing,
yeah,
and it to go through a whole roll of film. If you're printing roll to roll, you could
yeah,
probably laminate the goddamn thing in 2 minutes. You know,
yeah.
you print it for 3 or 4 hours, and you're going 2 minutes of laminating, and it just there's nothing worse than cutting that print halfway through. Whew,
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah, well, that's why I guess when you get into like vans and stuff, like a lot of shops that I go to and wrap for, like, how do you want it printed? Do you want it vertical or horizontal? And I'm like, how good are you at laminating? Because
Uh,
that's what it comes down to.
yeah.
Like, if you want to do a whole side of a van in one shot, like, that's a big panel.
But
Over 20 feet.
you know what? At the end of the day, you're saving yourself. You're cutting what, 45 minutes off your install
Yeah.
on one big panel?
Oh, for
If
sure.
if that, you probably a lot more. It depends how quick you are, but
Yeah.
that's a make or break for an install, especially if you're trying to do like on a commercial end. Being
Yep.
just a straight installer, you want to be doing 2 wraps a day. You know, maybe
Oh,
a
for sure.
partial and a full to make money.
Making the money.
Yeah, wasting time. You know, you got 4 or 5 panels you got to register. Oh my God, that's the worst.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Um, Actually, one of a friend of mine's in Florida, Crystal from Canny Wrap, uh, she showed me a trick how she does it. If somebody prints a panel vertical, she'll uh she'll lay them all out on the table and she'll like cut a 1 inch strip off the back and line everything up and
Prior.
she'll put that whole entire panel on in one piece.
Mm-hmm.
Like
That's a good trick, but
that,
if you mess that up, oh
oh
my
yeah,
God,
like yeah, you can really
there's no going
it can ruin
back.
your day.
Yeah,
There goes all
this.
your money.
Yeah, I actually saw her. I follow her on Instagram. I think she just did like a box truck like that. It was a big, probably 60-inch or 54-inch panel, and then she had like
Yeah,
a cutoff of the rest of it.
yeah.
Probably a 16 or 18-inch panel underneath it, and you can kind of see the backer on the bottom one. And she's just ripping the whole thing, laying it, and she's
Crystal
killing it.
is a complete savage. Like she's a sweetheart. I've known her for a few years now. I followed her for a while, and I actually got to work with her a little bit when we were down at I think it was ISA a couple years ago. And yeah, when she showed me that, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" So I did the one side of the van. I just did it normal, like started from the back and worked my way forward. And she's like, "Why are you making so much work for yourself? This is how I do it." We literally did the whole side of the van in like an hour and a half. I was like,
Yeah.
"Where the heck were you like this morning when I spent 4 hours like lining everything up?" She's
Oh
like,
my
"Well."
God.
So no, she's a good worker and she's a great installer. Like, yeah, you definitely got to get her on here too, and she's
Yeah, for
she's full
sure.
of knowledge.
For sure. Yeah, she's
So
been in
her,
the game for quite a while too.
yeah, no, she has. I mean, she was I think the manager of Raps for Less in Florida, and I mean she was out on her own for a bit, and then did the same thing I did, went and worked with a shop, and then went back out on her own again, and I mean she's still killing it. Like she's constantly on the move. She doesn't stop. She's
Right.
got a young boy, like I got my family too. And I mean, if it wasn't for my wife,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to live this lifestyle, like the lifestyle of a rapper. It's not for everyone, and it definitely takes a toll on your family. Like being a mobile installer, like I travel everywhere, all over Canada, United States,
How
and I
often
mean,
how often are you in the States?
um, through the summer, I'm there quite a bit because of all of our SEMA stuff. So Eric, like I said, does a lot of work with a lot of big builders. Do a lot of work with Keg Media out of Arkansas. He does all the rendering for the SEMA build, so we do a lot of work with him. So they'll get Eric to design and print it, and then I go do the install.
That's
So
awesome.
it's fun. I wish I was doing this when I was single. It'd be a lot easier.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, it's tough. It's
leaving
tough.
leaving the family for 2 weeks or 3 weeks at a time, it's tough. Like I got a 4 and 8 year old, and I got a very loving wife that supports me in what I do. So I
That's
owe it
great.
all to her. I mean, it takes a toll on the marriage, that's for sure. But I'm glad. he supports me, and he definitely motivates me, and so do my kids to keep getting better and better every day.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're gonna turn out like you were, watching dad wrap
Well,
cars, and you're gonna have a whole new new system, and that's a great story to have, from you watching your dad hand paint to now you
yeah,
being digital. And even if look back now, 25 years from now or 20 years from now, what your kids can, the technology they're gonna have to work
oh
with,
yeah.
you know.
Like I hope one of my kids do pick it up. It'd be nice to keep the it going in the family. Like I said, I'm fourth generation. My grandfather's still alive. He's 93 years old. He still does marketing. Like he says retirement's for old people. Like nine he's like in his 90s and still does it.
That's
He owned a
awesome.
billboard company that had 125 billboards, I believe, across Ontario, Canada. And like I used to do a lot of his installs and maintenance for him for his billboard sites. And a big company came in and was like, "All right, so you have two choices here. You either sell your company or we're gonna put you out of business." And he's like, "Well, I'm too old to fight, Like at the time, he was in his 80s, so he sold the company for probably close to $1 million,
Wow.
and just started doing marketing like placemats, advertisements for the local diners and stuff like that. Like he did not want to get out of it.
Yeah, definitely. It's a tough business, especially if that's all and you grow
Yeah,
up with that mentality. I mean, a lot
yeah,
of the old school guys, they just don't know how to quit, which is great. And I think that's a big
yeah.
downfall for the new generation. They're too quick to be like, "Oh, I'm done with it. I'll move on to something
Well,
else." There's
yeah,
no
it's
no
definitely changed for
y-
sure.
yeah, there's no commitment anymore. And um sometimes it's handouts, you know, like, hey,
Well,
it sucks, but we all know they're there. Um but and then some don't want to work, but they want to make all the money. So
yeah. Well, I mean, my both my parents are retired now. After everything that happened, it was just too stressful on them, so they just decided to retire. I've actually taken my dad with me on a couple jobs, to do some, like I took on a job, 4,000 square feet or 4,000 linear feet of wall graphic in a company in Toronto that was just getting all their rebranding done. And I mean, he's like, man, like watching you work is just crazy, like
it's
because
different
it's totally different. Like,
different times.
he was watching me like how I used to watch him when I was a kid. Like I was like, man, like when I grow up, I want to be just like my dad. Like I want to be a sign writer. But obviously, as as time grew on, I was like, screw this. There's no fucking way I'm ever gonna own a sign shop.
Yeah, we're going digital.
Yeah, like the sign industry is so cutthroat now
Oh,
that how like you tell someone they're like they want like say like a windshield lettering, like a name across the windshield, and you're like, well, that's $50, and they're like, what the fuck,
yeah.
$50? I figured it was gonna be like 15. It's like, well, like I have to pay a guy, minimum wage, which here is I think $12 or $13 an hour, and it's going up to 14 or 15 soon. I got to pay a guy to do that. Plus, I have to, take a chunk of material. He's got to load it in the computer. He's got to cut it. Then somebody's got to weed and mask it, and then we got to install it. Right there, like you're into it for what? How much in material? Like $15. Like, I may as well not even do it.
Right. Exactly. I used
So
to tell
I
people
was
for
like,
me to
screw
actually,
that.
yeah, for me to turn on my printer, I got to be making
Yep.
at least $100. Come on,
Yep.
stop.
Yeah. Yeah. So I won't even do it. Like I have a 60-inch Graphtec plotter, and I will not tell. I mean, now people are hearing it, but I won't tell anybody
you you
where I
let it
live that
you
I
let
have it.
you let it all out. Now everyone's gonna be hitting
Yeah,
you up
I
for
use that for
graphics.
personal use. If I gotta cut pinstriping or something for a job, but I don't advertise that I have a plotter. I don't need somebody coming, hey, can you make me 15, 16 by 24 chloroplast signs?
Yeah,
No way.
Yeah, right.
Go to the sign shop up the street. Go get
Yeah,
them to do it.
those days are over.
Yeah, no way. But yeah, I have that, and then I mean, I don't think I'll buy a printer
Yeah, so
because
you said you were going to be trying to move into a shop come 2018. What's your setup going to be? Are you going to be still just doing installs, but
so
keeping it contained to your
yeah, like I'll just do
office?
installs. I'll bring my plotter to to my shop
Yeah,
because like I'll use it for like I said racing stripes or something along that line. Um, but for printing wise, like I have a guy here that's in Ontario that will print on vehicle wrap material for $2.50 a square foot.
god
Why would
damn.
I buy a printer?
Yeah, there's no reason for it.
It'd be stupid. Like we used to charge back in the day like $9.50 a square foot to print.
Yeah,
Now guys are doing it for under $3. Like why am I gonna go spend 40 or 50 grand on a printer and a laminator and a computer when I have a guy who can do it?
yeah. I mean, I think that's where it's going to go. A lot of new shops are going to just say no to buying all the equipment and just wholesale it all out.
Just have a print shop.
Yeah.
For the my page, the Rap Promoter. I have a shop actually. Final
Yeah,
Victim Jeff brought them up.
we
We
print
print
wraps. Yeah.
rap. Yeah, I mean, they advertise with me. So right there, there's a shop in the U.S. that's just a print house, I guess, and they do designing and whatnot.
For sure.
But why would I justify spending that kind of money when there are print shops? Now, if you can find a good one that you work well with, that they know what you expect and you get them to print the samples, you're not going to have any problems down the road.
Right,
You're,
right.
you know, I called this guy up in here in Ontario, and I said I got this job that they want to try to color match the factory paint. Like here's the Pantone color. Can you try to match it? And so they did 3 or 4 different samples, like 2 up, 2 down type thing, and we tried to match it. Now the customer was being really picky that it wasn't the same, and I said like, listen, this is a print. It's not like I can't paint it. We're trying to match something close to it,
Yeah,
but
you're
they
not
were
going to
just
get
too picky.
exact.
But I mean, and I personally am solvent. I don't like latex.
You don't.
I
Whoa! You just
yeah
threw a wrench in everything right now.
yeah no I'm full blown solvent print. I I like installing solvent better. I would I I don't know. I haven't had good luck with latex. Now it
Whoa!
could just be the shops I'm using, but I like solvent print personally.
What problems or issues are you coming across that the latex isn't working for you? Is it the reason?
I
Is it the
found personally that it discolors a lot quicker if you're
okay?
doing, say, like a van, like an Econoline van, for an example. When you're coming around that curve at the top, I don't know. I just found that it discolors really quickly compared to solvent. I don't know. Maybe
Really?
it's just me. That's the way I feel. I would personally rather wait that 24 to 48 hours for a print to dry, then,
Hmm. And that's key.
that's my personal take on it. I'm solvent.
Wow.
I'm probably, you know what? There's probably a bunch of guys that are just like, screw this guy.
Or it could be the opposite too. I mean,
Yeah,
people would be like, "Yeah, solvent all the way." I wouldn't even have batted an eye if somebody said solvent. I would have walked the other way. It never.
yeah.
I
No,
mean,
with solvent, I mean, you got to let it dry. You have to let it dry.
yeah.
There's no doubt about it. The 24 to 48 hours, depending on the dark colors. So,
Right.
so Eric from ECD, he's got a Mamaki printer.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not sure the model of it, but I tell him like, dude, like let that shit dry, like lay it out or coil it up and put it on the fan rack and let
Yep.
it dry for the couple days. I don't care. Um, we've always had solvent printers that, like my dad rolling with solvent. And then when they were starting to talk about this latex print coming out, I was just so against it.
I mean, I
But
come from the eco, even having that printer, and you know it too. When you printed a
yeah,
dark color, you know how
yeah,
heavy it literally would be like a
oh
wet
yeah,
blanket if you printed
like
black when you
oh
took it off
yeah.
the backer,
Oh man, I had
right?
one shop, and they were like, yeah, we let it gas out. I'm like, bullshit. I can smell it. Like I peeled the liner off the back, and you could smell the ink gassing out.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, there's no way. And when I found more with 180
Hmm.
that if you print it heavy and laminate, before the 24 hours, it just gums up that material like crazy.
You know what it is I actually talked to the 3M, one of the 3M um, reps in my area, and they actually told me exactly what it is. What you're trapping is because the vinyl's so wet still.
Yep.
You haven't had it fully outgas
Well,
for
that's
the
it. It
proper
can't go
time.
out because you got a laminate on it now. It has to go back.
Yeah, so once you put that laminate on it, you literally are trapping that and it will not outgas and it will give you the worst bubbles you will ever
Oh my
see in
God.
your
Yeah.
life
And you know
on the
what?
final
A
product.
lot of guys, so the big thing I saw everywhere, people were blaming 3M for the channel collapsing. And I bet you 9 times out of 10, it was the print. Like, people were fast to blame the material, but I would almost put money on it that it was people just saturating the print and then laminating it. Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, it was good that all of a sudden, I guess, the latex came out because there was a lot of shops that were like, hey, like, you know what, this can't sit in my shop for 2 days. It has to go in and out. So like they were print, let it, keep it coiled up for 4 or 5 hours, and then hit the laminator, and that was, I guess, a good thing for them. But that was the main issue with 3M, was people were saying, well, I'm getting glue lines, and
Hmm.
I'm getting, the channels collapsing, I'm getting bubbles. But 9 times out of 10, it was the way it was printed, or it was the installer. It was just, you know, you can't press the bubble out. You gotta pop it because the ink was on so much.
But even
And
even
I mean, I
popping it,
learned that the hard way.
yeah, even popping it wouldn't even help. It's because it's not trapped air.
Hmm.
It's the actual ink on the vinyl trapped in
Yep.
between the laminate, and you can't get that stuff out. Like you can pop it all
Yeah.
day long, you're just gonna make a mess. You might as well leave it.
Yeah.
I came to the conclusion if you left it for a little while, it could
Yep.
possibly go away. If you a
Yeah.
couple weeks later, um, thank God to this day I never had anything come back. But I did
Hmm.
notice that, and I was part of. You remember a few years back when 3M had that huge recall on a specific batch of vinyl, where the material actually lost the slidability. No matter, even if
Yeah.
you didn't print on it, if you took it off the backer and put it on, it like stuck for some reason. I lost
Yeah.
3 rolls with full prints because of that. I was so bullshit. And
Yeah.
they made good. They sent me 3 new rolls, but you know how hard it was for me to install the goddamn wrap with it being like that?
Yeah.
I lost. They could have gave me 10 rolls. I still lost money. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's hard. So when it comes down to warranty claims with certain manufacturers, I mean, for the most part, they all stand behind their product
Yeah,
100%.
they do.
I mean, they all have a good product, and it's just on the person. We all have our preference. I wouldn't say one product is better than the other. 3M, Avery, eh, they're all different beasts.
Right.
It just comes down to the install and the printing and the laminating and the outgassing if you're going with the EcoSol, or it, I think, don't you still have to like let latex gas out a little bit?
They advertise that you don't have to because it's because of the way it's set up. It's got two dryers, like
Yeah.
right in the front, I guess. Well, it's what it's doing, I believe. Don't take what I'm saying as 100% truth because I might be talking out of my ass. So I think that there might be three dryers because sometimes you only get two. You get the back, which heats it, so the ink
Yep.
can be absorbed, and then on the front, it just heats it again, so it's kind of touchable, so to say. And I think with
Okay.
the HP, I believe there's one just underneath the print. It's a little bit further forward where the heads are. So it just
Okay.
makes it hot, so it absorbs the ink. And then it's got two more heaters in the front, which give it extra heat to make the stuff. I don't know the chemistry of it, to be quite honest with you. I
Yeah.
thought it was something to do with the lighting inside of it, like just kind of
Oh, okay.
something
Like
to.
like I said, like I don't really know much about like prints and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
I'm
I
so
mean,
out of the
I
game.
I know I know enough to be able to make myself look like I know what I'm doing, but like I used to have to rip rip stuff in VersaWorks and then send it
Yep.
over and print it. Like I can do that stuff and
Yeah.
size things, and I know my way around Photoshop and a little bit about around Illustrator. I can work magic with Composer
With
and
Composer,
and
yeah, old school. Do they
like
still
I
make?
still have it. I have an old Dell laptop, and I actually have Composer on that and I have the dongle and everything, and I still mess around with it. It's
Does
a
the
good.
does the computer still have a serial port in it?
Yeah, it's funny, man. Like when I like bust that old laptop out and I just start messing around, like if I can't find a specific font that I want for something, I
Yeah,
like going to Composer because I know where it is, and I'm like, oh, there it is right there, and I
that's
can do
awesome.
like the old what are they called? Those like images that they had, but yeah, like Composer still is my go-to sometimes. Like we still have my my dad still has his old Gerber plotter from 1982 that he bought, and you know what? That thing still fucking cuts.
And it probably cuts better than some of the new ones
Oh,
now.
it's slow and loud,
Yeah,
but you can cut straight for
yeah.
days.
And you can cut little tiny letters probably out of that thing, right?
Yeah.
The
Well,
new ones you
so my dad
can't.
did a wedding back in 2001, and he had to weed 2,000 little like names of the people for the wedding,
Oh,
and the 2001 the year that they got married, and put them on all the champagne glasses.
wow.
And I thought my dad was gonna friggin' go into a drinking binge because he would literally sit there at night at the kitchen table weeding these names.
Oh my
So
god. I still have to this day my very first cutter, which was a Roland PNC 24, I think it was.
okay, yeah,
The the thing probably had like 10 years on me when I bought it, and that was probably going back 2000, I don't know, 2007, 2008, give or take.
okay,
And I lettered so many trucks with that goddamn thing. Old school. You're putting the diamond crosses on the top or the squares at the
yeah,
top to overlay. You put your first base down, and then you put your second color, and you just keep matching them all up till you get your final
oh,
product on that door. Man, I don't miss those days, but I definitely
oh.
respect like the way people lettered vehicles back then. You know?
When somebody used to come into the shop and they're like, "Yeah, I got three colors. I have a drop shadow and an outline," and it's like, "Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah,
Like, who designed this?"
yeah, yeah, definitely. Oh,
Oh,
you,
my brother-in-law, he's a graphic designer downtown Toronto. He did it.
yeah.
It's like, what?
Tell him to put the graphics on.
Yeah. So, I mean, luckily when the clear Premask came out, that made things a lot easier when you were doing different colors. So we had two Gerber plotters. We had the Gerber Edge. We had a 48-inch Kodak, and then we had the 54-inch Roland printer. and then the 54-inch um, Royal Sovereign laminator.
You guys had a
So
lot
I
of
mean,
equipment.
yeah, we had a lot of money tied up in that shop, and then like I said, we had a full service bucket truck, so a Ford Econoline F3 or E350 with a 27-inch bucket
Boom.
on the roof, like an old uh, TV and phone service truck.
Yep.
And then we had a 38-foot crane that was like built on a trailer, and then we had a 30-foot long trailer as well. So and we had two pickup trucks. So we had a full service sign shop. We built sign boxes like in house. We did silkscreen printing. So come election time, me, my mom, and dad would basically set up an assembly line for silkscreen printing. And my dad had like the screen table and everything, and we'd get everything set up. My dad, I swear to God, set the world record for silkscreen printing. He silkscreen printed one color, 116 by 24 election signs in 7.5 minutes.
What?
Yeah, he was a savage. I would
Wow.
literally load it. He would squeegee it. My mom would unload and put it on the rack. We timed it 7.5 minutes. He did 100 election signs.
He probably laughs now when he sees all the automatics working at shops.
Oh, well, you know what? I don't think, honestly, I don't think a flatbed printer could even do it.
No, I don't think so either, to be quite honest with you. Even putting a
So
full
yeah,
4x8 sheet in there.
yeah, and then you gotta cut it.
Yeah,
So
right.
now so we used to buy our election signs pre-cut from Grimco.
Yep.
So you would just get them,
With the
16 by
stakes.
24 inch,
Yep.
and it was cheaper to go that route. So we would sell 50 one color election signs for $300. That was good money.
Damn, yeah, back then?
Yeah. Like to have a guy with a flatbed printer, yeah, unless you got volume, you're really not making a lot. So
No.
that was our busy time of year was, the elections, whether it was provincial or municipal or federal. Like we would always get guys that would come in because we had a pretty good price, $300 for one color, one sided. If somebody wanted double sided, obviously you couldn't do that's where the flatbed printer would beat you for a
Right.
double-sided sign
Would you
because
guys
they
flash
could
it?
do it.
Would you guys flash it so you can do the
No,
other side?
no, I just leave it on the rack, put some fans on it, and yeah, just let the fans dry the ink and then do it the next day.
Imagine having all of them sitting in a rack waiting.
Oh, dude,
Ugh.
like I said, come election time, our shop was covered in 16 by 24 election signs.
How many
So
times, like I've even done this lettering, how many times did you do the second side upside down?
that didn't happen very often, but yeah, that was normally when you were, working past like 10 or 11 o'clock at night trying to
Yeah,
get an order done.
you're
But
running the
that,
20 hours straight,
you want to
train,
know whose fault that always was? That was always my fault if that went in the
obviously.
wrong way because I was always the one loading it. But and then when my dad got hit with the cancer and he also had a heart attack in the same year,
Oh,
I got stuck silk screen printing. I mean I started silk screen printing by the time I was 9 or 10 years old. I had learned from an old English guy and my dad from a shop that he worked for in Toronto. He basically taught me how to silk screen shirts and stuff like that. I mean, it's all the same, just
yeah,
making sure the ink's on,
that's a huge art too in
keeping
itself.
keeping your screen clean. Like we didn't have an oven or anything, but well, for t-shirts we did,
Right.
but this was the shop that my dad used to work for back in the early '80s.
How many
But I
screens
mean,
would you guys have like laying around, or your
oh
dad always reuse a lot? Because you
yeah,
save money
so
on reusing them.
yeah, like depending on the client, you would get a screen made,
Right.
or we would just buy like from Grimco the uh the pre-cut stuff that you just put on with the water and vinegar,
Yep.
and it's like I think it's like an orange. I don't know what it's called, and then you just let it dry, and then you would screen however many signs. Typically, we would use those if we were just doing like 50 signs. You would just do it that way instead of flashing, like taking it to a guy and getting him to make it, and then really that screen is, I think it's stuck like that. I don't think you can, I can't remember. I mean, it's been so long since I've silk screen printed, but
Yeah, the
yeah,
technology's
like,
changed quite a bit
well,
with the
yeah, like,
automatics and all that stuff. So,
and it was getting harder and harder to get inks and stuff like that. I
hmm
mean, you can get them, but it just came down to like the silkscreen ink was so bad for you. Like even back in, the 70s, like my grandfather has to wear gloves on his hands because they, from dealing with all the lead chemicals,
yeah,
that it was like the poison was coming out of his skin and he was breaking out all the time. Like he wears like white gloves now because his hands are just, they're cracked and they're just disgusting looking because of all the chemicals.
people don't think about that, but that's out. That's producing a smell too, and a lot of the
Oh
silkscreen
yeah.
guys back then built up cancer and things like that based because of
Well,
that.
they all smoked and they all drank straight like scotch.
Right? Yeah, that too.
Like
Those
my
late
dad used
nights.
to be like a heavy smoker, and he used to smoke 3 packs a day, and then like they'd be silkscreen printing or spraying with like some lacquer paint and with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. Like that was the old school sign guy. Like that's how I remember the sign industry. Like just everything. I love the sign industry, but I also hate it.
Yeah, yeah. It's got its perks and its places, but
It's
I had
it's in
started.
my blood. So.
Yeah, I had started making signs at first, and then had to transition to just straight wraps because I couldn't do both. It was
Uh-huh.
too too much involvement. You got to pull permits at the city halls. To put up a little
Well,
sign or letter some
yeah. You
windows.
want to
It's
get signs up.
yeah,
Oh man.
it
Yeah, I used to deal
sucks.
with a lot of that stuff was getting permits for signage for the first storefronts. The town I live in and where we used to have our family sign shop, they, I remember my dad going to the meeting and they were basically, there was one of the counselors that was trying to ban backlit signs. And my dad's like, but why would you want to ban that? And he's like, well, it's like, this is an old town and we want to make it look like Mayberry. My
Mm,
dad's like, Mayberry was a fictional town, right? Like that wasn't real. So they were like we want the old hand painted signs and the gooseneck letter or lights on the
lights.
front. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
don't do that. It doesn't last.
Yeah, and not even that. He's trying to go with the times and change it up. There's nothing wrong with that. Either way, they still get their goddamn $100 for the stupid permit. Like, stop.
Yeah, it's and then well the other thing too, like so we dealt with billboards and stuff like that, like big huge billboards, up to like 48 feet long and 12 feet high, and you deal with the Ministry of Transportation for that stuff,
Hmm
trying to get a permit, and they're like, well, how far is your billboard going to be from the road? How far is it away from a curb? Like, there's all kinds of questions, but it's like, man, I just paid $200 for that.
Right, exactly. For to sit in front of what, maybe 5 or 6 people to. It's almost like going to
That
court.
really have no idea what they're talking about. Like,
Right. No,
they've never done it. They
none
have
of
no
them come.
clue.
None of them come from a background of signage. It's just
Yeah.
people that got that job, and now they're basically ruling whether you put it up or you don't.
Well, like when the times started changing from what do you call it, like the like channel letters where
Right.
people would put their message on the board to LEDs. That was a hard transition for some places because you know churches could get it without a permit because they were a church, but like our schools could get it, but say some business that wants it, they had to take a permit out for it.
Yep.
Like we had a couple times where a client would be like, hey, like we want to get a 4x8 LED reader board, and we're like, well, where are you located? They're like, oh, this in this area, and we're like, you can't, you're not allowed because the Better Business Bureau in that area, they're like, like we want to keep that area looking the way it is. We don't want LED signs everywhere. And then they would be like, well, that that high school up the road just got one. They're like, yeah, but they're exempt from it. And it's like, what the hell? Like, so
Yeah.
they would get stuck with these crappy like channel letters that if you weren't careful, like I mean, kids are kids. They would come in at night and start rearranging letters and see what they could spell.
Oh man.
It's like so many. I mean, it's all over the internet. Like you can see, like people will rearrange, like the home of the Angus
Right.
burger, and then it says Anus burger. Like it's stuff like that. So I mean, the LEDs were a big thing. And actually, there's a church here just up the street from me that just switched from their old channel letter sign to a new LED sign, and they got like their sign for sale. And I'm like, man, you should just take that to the dump because no one's gonna buy that old channel sign off you.
Right.
Nobody cares.
Yeah. Old technology. Man, I'm so glad we're
Yeah,
doing wraps now because I don't know
yeah.
what I'd be doing with signage at this point.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can do so much with the storefront and with the new, brick wraps, and you can wrap corrugated metal on the side of a building. Like the sky's the limits with it now,
For
and it's
sure.
better than hanging a banner on the front of a building.
I agree.
So,
Totally. But,
yeah, man.
dude, honestly, it's been such a huge pleasure to be talking to you. And I
Oh,
appreciate you
likewise.
giving us an insider to your your beginnings. As sharing your dad's story too. That's great. I like I said, I love and respect highly of the old school sign painters, and I'm glad that he's still around and be able to watch and see what you're doing. With everything,
Yeah.
even your grandfather too. You
Yeah,
know,
well, so when I was at RapsCon, we met like the guys from Yellow Tools, like from like the the main headquarters came down, and I like how they have sign makers. It's in my DNA for a shirt that he
yeah,
has, and I was like, man, you gotta give me that pattern. I'm gonna try to make it and get myself, my dad, my grandfather, and my son in the same photo. Like, there's 4 generations that are still alive, and I sure do hope that my son or my daughter does pick up raps. I mean, that would be freaking amazing if they did, but I'm not gonna push them into it.
right.
I mean, it'll be in their blood or it won't be. So
That goes to be a great story, you know, with generations down the road. You know,
yeah, for sure.
Chuck, it's literally been such an honor to be talking to you, and I know it's getting late, and I know it's probably hard to be home and not be able to spend time with your kids and your
Yeah.
wife. So
Well, I'm glad we were able to talk. Hopefully, maybe in a few months from now, once I open my shop, we can do a recap and just see how I'm doing.
absolutely, absolutely, that will
Cool,
definitely
man.
be happening.
Well, appreciate you having me on your show. I can't wait to listen to the future episodes that you're having. I know we spoke a little bit about some guys that we could bring in. Like I said, I know a lot of good, knowledgeable people that you could talk to, and we could definitely bring a couple people in to talk to you.
I'm looking forward to 2018 and seeing where this all goes. So far, so
Yeah,
good.
same here. Yep.
We'll wrap it up here, and best of luck with 2018 with the new shop and
Yep.
um
Thank you.
and everything else for end of the year. I know you're probably jamming in as much work as you can before the new
Yeah.
year.
Well, I
So
got this weekend I got 3 tractor trailers just to do a cover up on. So I'm gonna be working all weekend to get those done. And
definitely.
yeah, just got a little bit of work for next week, and then I think it's Christmas after that. So
Not another week, can you believe it? This year flew by
yeah,
so quick.
Oh man, you have no idea. Just leading up to SEMA, it just seemed like yesterday it was the beginning of summer, and then once SEMA comes, it's like, holy shit, where did all that time go?
Right? And now we're stuck in the cold weather, and
Oh,
people don't get what like the type of situations we're dealt with over here.
oh man, yeah. Like those guys in Miami and California have no idea what it's like to work when it's minus 30 outside,
Yep.
and you're wrapping the side of a car, and all of a sudden somebody opens up the shop door and they're pulling that panel back, and it
Ugh.
just shatters from that blast of cold air. So,
I could go on with nightmare stories of
oh man,
endless
maybe we might
cleaning.
have to do a two-parter, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Just on cleaning alone in the wintertime. Oh my
Oh
god.
man. Yeah, I tell like the guys, like my buddies that are over like in Cali and Florida, like man, yeah, they're like it's so cold here. I'm like, how cold is it? And they're like, oh, it's 70. I'm like, dude, it's minus 31 right
Yeah.
now outside. Like
They
this morning, it was minus 27.
oh see it was about 30 degrees out this morning here.
Yeah,
And it's funny they complain, "Oh, it's 70 and it rained for 1 hour." Please.
yeah, yeah,
Please.
yeah. That's brutal.
Oh man,
Oh
Chuck!
yeah.
Again, it's been an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you.
I can't wait to do a recap and follow up with you
Yeah,
again.
man, for sure.
Uh,
Yeah, we'll
let
talk soon.
let everyone know where they can go ahead and follow you on social media and websites.
So I have my personal account, which is ECD Customs _ Chuck, and I also have the Rap Promoter, and I also have Rap Promoter. So I have two Rap Promoter accounts, and that don't. The new one is just a secret for now. I mean, people know about it, but what's happening with that is a secret. So big things are coming for the new year with that account, as well as we launched our YouTube channel, and we will be actually putting up some stuff in the new year as well. That's going hand in hand with that. We're on Snapchat as well, and Twitter, all Rap Promoters. So you can check all that stuff out on all the social media stuff. And we're on Facebook as well.
Awesome. Everyone, go out, start liking Chuck's stuff, will you?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Anytime. Anytime. Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot. Yeah, I'm glad I was able to chat with you for a little bit.
Chuck, again, I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy day to sit down and talk to me for a little bit.
Thank you. Alrighty.
I want to thank Chuck for taking the time to sit and talk to us. We had some great laughs and talked about some great topics. If you guys like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and like our podcast on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Google Play, and now on iHeartRadio. Thank you for all the support and kind words you guys have sent in. I look forward to what the future brings. Till next time, that's a wrap.